Good morning, y'all. It's Monday. Yay! Monday, the 15th of April, 2024. It's the middle of the month. You know what else today? It's tax day here in America. Some last minute tax preppers like me. We've got some things I got to take care of today before I get penalized. Anyway, not that I wanted to wait until the last minute, but it is what it is when you procrastinate. Anyway, so I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you're able to be in church Sunday. And remember, it is the best for you to be in a Bible believing, preaching church that will hold to the Bible, nothing wavering, will not allow worldly preaching in, worldly music in, or worldly activities. A Bible believing, preaching church, one that preaches the Bible and not his opinion. And I said his opinion. So we are going to get into a hot topic this week, and one that's contended in different churches, especially some fundamental Baptist churches. And that topic is marriage, divorce, and remarriage. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians 7. We're going to read verses 10 through 16, and I'll just give a brief introduction to this. Then we're going to break it down this week. Verse 10, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 10. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. But for the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband, your children were else your children unclean, else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband, or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? And let's just look at verse 17 as well. But as God distributed every man as the Lord hath called everyone, so let him walk, and so ordain I in all churches. So this hot topic, whether a Christian can be divorced and remarried. I'm going to put my situation out there. I was divorced in 2020. But during that time, I also, as I was going through the divorce, prayed that God would send a wife to me. Somebody that would stand beside me, not try to run in front of me and be the head, not somebody that would walk all over me, not somebody that would be mentally or even physically abusive in these situations. And you know what? The Lord answered that prayer. And that same year that I was divorced, I was remarried. I'll be very honest. I am the type of guy and that is in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 that needs to be married. One, I need a helpmeet. And two, there's a situation that Paul's very accurate. It's better to marry than to burn. So God prepared and prepped a wife for me as I was going through my divorce. And as soon as it was over, we got married. Now, in my situation, there are some that teach because I am divorced. I cannot be a preacher anymore because I'm divorced. And what they do is they take 1 Timothy chapter 3 and say a preacher or a pastor cannot be divorced and remarried and be a preacher or a pastor, which is wrong. It's flat out wrong. There's nothing in the Bible that says a preacher or a pastor can't be remarried and can't be divorced. what they do is they say, they use that passage where a bishop must be blameless, the husband of one wife. And they say from that you cannot be divorced and remarried because that's not your wife. You now have a second wife. But what they don't understand is in that context, in that time period, polygamy was a problem in the Gentiles. Where, just like the Jews at one point, they had multiple wives at one time. The Gentiles were doing the same thing. And if you read that whole passage, Paul is saying, let him rule his. Let's go there so we can see it. 1 Timothy chapter 3. Let's read the whole passage. This is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, but not covetousness. One that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Now, there's multiple things here that qualifications for a bishop, a pastor, a preacher. And this one that everybody likes to hone in on is the fact they can't be divorced and remarried because it says a husband of one wife. But what they don't put into whole perspective and in context, if a man has multiple wives, then most likely he has a lot of children. And at that point, he can't even rule his own house because it's going to be crazy. And so you should only have one wife as a pastor, but not that you can't be divorced and remarried. That's not what this passage is saying. A good example would be, look what happened to Solomon. The guy had 700 wives and 400 concubines, and only probably the Lord knows exactly how many kids he had. Look what happened as Solomon kept getting married and married and married to multiple wives. The kingdom fell apart, and the king fell apart, and Solomon backslid. So in context, by saying a bishop can't be remarried is false context. That's not what Paul's saying. Paul is simply saying you can't have multiple wives and multiple kids because you won't even be able to rule your own house, let alone to rule the house of God. So we need to put this in perspective right off the bat. So I put my situation out there. Now, as we break this down over the next couple of days, there are multiple reasons and grounds for divorce in the Bible, 3 to 4 in particular. And we're going to break those down this week. So if you're out there and you've been divorced as a Christian, and it's a biblical grounds that you're divorced, you should not live in bondage to somebody that tells you you can't get remarried, because God would rather you be married than to burn in lust and desire. That's all I have for you today. Unless you can contain yourself and stay single, God would have you to be married. That's all I have for you today. I'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless you.